Hello everyone, I am the Desert Gardener, and before I start my series of growing tomatoes and peppers in the desert, I thought I'd do another one of my garden Mythbuster videos. Those seem to be fun and informative. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about how to get rid of gophers, moles, and voles in your lawn and garden. Now there are a number of different myths. I've compiled probably the most popular ones here, and I'm going to go over each one, tell you if they work, if they don't work, and why. So the first one is water and smoke. Those are very similar, so we'll talk about those together. Now they're probably the oldest and the most popular ones. So you see a gopher mound, you just dig it out, you take a garden hose, you stick it in there, you turn it up for a full blast, and you hope to drown the little sucker. Well, unfortunately, most people aren't aware of just how extensive the tunnels that run underneath can be. In fact, I've heard of people who have had their lawns actually collapse and fall down a foot or so just because all of the gopher tunnels and such collapsed. So the odds of actually being able to drown something like that and fill up that area is next to impossible, especially since they'll just go under, then go up someplace to higher ground. They'll collapse the tunnel and dig the other way. So water is not going to work. And smoke is pretty much the same thing. You can buy these in any home store. They look like a big firecracker. You light the fuse, you stick it in there, you cover it over, and the idea is the smoke will go through their tunnels and suffocate them to death. Well, same thing. They'll just find some safe place to go. They'll collapse one of their own tunnels and pack it up nice and tight, and then just dig the other way. So the odds of you actually killing anything with water or smoke is pretty slim to none. So this myth is busted. Now the next one has to do with poison. You can buy gopher pellets, again, at pretty much any home store. And I don't know what they make this stuff out of, but it's clearly not something that the gophers consider food. I've been trying this on and off for years. You find a gopher hole, you throw some in there, you come back an hour later, and the gopher has literally pushed the poison out of its hole and filled it up. They are not interested in eating this stuff, and I've tried it multiple times. I don't think I've ever had any success with it. So the gopher pellets and the poison, again, completely ineffective, completely busted. Now the next one are the sonic devices, like this guy here. Now, the idea is pretty simple. You just stick it in the ground and turn it on, and it emits a high-pitched noise that the gophers don't like, but we can't hear. So the concept is really cool and certainly very simple, but there are definitely some issues with it. The first one is it seems to work better on gophers than it does on moles and voles. The other problem is this cover here on the top gets rather opaque after a while of being in the sun, and then the sun can't get to the solar sensor in the underneath. The other problem is just how poorly they're made. They just don't seem to last. After about a year, they just stop working. But the biggest issue is the range. So it says on the package that it covers 600 square feet. Now that's a pretty big area, but in my testing I found that it seems to only cover about a 6-foot radius, not 600 square feet. So I have a pretty big yard here, so it would take me probably 9 or 10 of these just to cover the majority of the yard. And at anywhere from $6 to $40, depending on where you get them, that can be a pretty big expense. So because of the expense, and because they're really not as effective as I'd like them to be, I'm going to call this one busted as well. Now the next one are the traps. There are a couple of different types of traps. There are the ones that you put down into the gopher tunnel, and I had one around someplace, I just can't seem to find it. And then there's traps like this guy here, and this goes above the tunnel. Now, the in-tunnel traps seem to work pretty well. You just have to dig it out and stick it pretty far in there, and of course set the trap, which is part of the problem. The traps are a little complicated and kind of difficult to set. and they're not always effective. Oftentimes I'll put them down in there, I'll come back a while later and find the gopher has just filled it full of dirt. But I have managed to catch a few over the years, so it can be effective from time to time. But these guys, the ones that sit above the ground, these ones are totally useless, because it's every time I use them, I'll come back later and just simply find the thing full of dirt. The gopher has pushed dirt up into the trap, filled up its tunnel, and gone elsewhere. I've never caught anything with one of these. So the in-tunnel traps, I'm going to call them plausible because they do work every once in a while, but they are a little bit difficult to set and difficult to use. But the above ground traps, they're useless. They're absolutely busted. So let's go to the next one. The next one is predator urine and scat. Now you can buy fox and coyote urine online. The price varies quite a bit depending on where you get it. The idea is simple. You just spray it on the gopher mound or open it up and spray it in their hole. And gophers have a pretty good sense of smell. So they'll smell that, they'll think that there's a predator in the area, and they'll leave. And the other one is scat. You can take maybe a friend or neighbor's dog poop, stick it down in the hole, cover it up, and again they'll smell it, they'll think that there's a predator in the area, and they'll go elsewhere. Now I've heard this works very well. Now unfortunately it's the only thing on this list that I haven't tried myself. So I'm hoping to hear from you guys. Have you used this? Does it work? Does it not work? And if so, what predator do you use? Fox, coyote, wolf, dog, what seems to work the best for you? Was it the urine? Was it the scat? How did you do it? I'd really like to hear. So I'm not going to be able to comment on this one because I haven't used it myself, but the idea does seem like it could be effective. The next one is to get your own predator. Now, cats are probably the best thing here. In the old days, farmers used to do this. They would get what were called farm cats, because when you were feeding animals like horses and stuff, rodents really love to eat animal feed. So after a while, the rats and mice and stuff, their population would just get out of control. So the farmers would get cats and let them live in the barn. And it seemed to work pretty well. In fact, I can attest, I've had a couple of outdoor cats. I once had a very small female tortoiseshell cat, and every time she got outside, she would go hunting. She would catch birds, mice, anything that just happened to be in the yard, and she was pretty good at it. But years later, I had a rather large Maine Coon cat, and she was terribly lazy. Wouldn't catch anything. Hunting was not at all an interest to her. She'd just rather lay around until I open a can. So because it kind of depends on the breed of cat, you guess, and the temperament of the animal, plus taking on a pet, is really a big thing. I'm not sure I would really recommend it. I'll call it plausible. If you're in the market for getting a new pet and you want to get a cat that's going to be an indoor-outdoor cat or just an outdoor cat, it's definitely something to try. They'll maybe catch it, maybe just scare it away. There's a lot of variables here, so I'm just going to call it plausible. So let's get to the next one, and that one's smell. Like I said earlier, gophers have a pretty good sense of smell. So if you take something that has a very strong smell, something like these dryer sheets here, they do not like this, and they will immediately vacate the area. So when I see a gopher hole or a gopher mound, I'll dig it up, open up the hole, and I'll just take one of these dryer sheets, shove it down in there, and gophers will not come anywhere near that part of the lawn again. Now, how far away do they go? Well, that seems to vary. Sometimes they'll just dig another hole maybe 10, 15 feet away, or maybe it's 20 feet or 30 feet, and I'll have to do it again. But eventually, as I keep chasing them around the yard, eventually they'll get to the point where they've left the property altogether. Now, this is a really effective method. I've never seen a gopher come anywhere near the hole that they previously dug where I've put a dryer sheet in there, and it doesn't kill the gophers. So if you're looking for something that's a non-kill method, that's certainly a good choice here. Now it does just kind of drive them away. If you live in a housing tract with neighbors, you may just be driving them into your neighbor's property where it becomes their problem. So it's up to you on where you live and whether you think that's a good idea. But this is what I found to be the most effective. So I'm going to call this confirmed. Dryer sheets work great. Now, just as a quick side note, I want to say that you should never put dryer sheets in the dryer. The chemicals on here, they build up on the lint screen, which causes the buildup of heat in the dryer, which eventually can lead to a house fire. It's one of the most common causes of house fires. Do not use dryer sheets. Get one of those static balls or something instead. All right, and the last one is gasoline. I'm not going to recommend gasoline. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you a clip here of someone else using gasoline, and you can judge for yourself. It's really hysterical. So as you can see, gasoline is a bad idea. It's very dangerous. You're going to blow something up, and it's probably not terribly effective either. So don't do it. So I hope you enjoyed this. If so, please hit the like button. And if you want to be part of my series of growing tomatoes and peppers in the desert, go ahead and subscribe, and I'll be starting that here shortly. See you in the next one.